Hey guys, April Garfoley here, Recovery Concepts and Consulting, and you have tuned in to Rehab for the Soul Sessions number 6, entitled The Relapse Cycle. Guys, if this is the first time you're tuning in to Rehab for the Soul and you are interested in weekly tips on how to stay sober and spiritual, you have come to the right place. We would love to have you. Please subscribe. It's a wonderful community where basically we talk about anything and everything that is recovery, sobriety, addiction, and spirituality. Really all things go. And we have a good time here too, because what is life if you can't have a good time? You know. We throw a party every now and then. Correction, we don't throw parties. I just try to be the party. That way, everywhere I go, there's a party. So it usually works out for me. Maybe not so much anyone else around me, but works out for me. Regardless, I digress. Subscribe to the channel. We would love to have you. It's a good time. You'll learn a little bit about addiction, recovery, sobriety, and spirituality. All right? All right. So without further ado, what I want to do today is talk about relapse, okay? Relapse is one of those things that everybody seems to kind of have their own little idea of what it is and what it means to relapse, especially addicts and alcoholics. Of course, when you hear the word relapse, the first thing you think of is drugs and alcohol, probably most likely alcohol. So what I want to do is just basically break down the definition of relapse, what that really means, let you guys in on the relapse cycle, what that really looks like, and also kind of break the stigma that relapse is bad or the end of the world. Relapse really isn't that big of a deal at all. Okay, it's preventable, but it's also really not that big of a deal when it happens. So, very simple, very easy, we keep it casual, let's have a good time, and let's get started. All right, guys. So, here we go. Relapse. Relapse. Okay. First myth that I want to dispel for you. Relapse does not equal a return back to using drugs and alcohol. Okay? A lot of times, working in this drug and alcohol mental health field for 15 years, I know I don't look that old, but it's a long time. 15 years, and people will often come up to me and say, oh, you have people coming to rehab and say, I relapsed. And I'll say, well, what happened? And they'll say, I don't know, everything was fine. No, everything wasn't fine. That's your first mistake. Everything isn't fine, and then all of a sudden you use again. So when we're talking about relapse, the first rule of thumb is relapse does not mean a return back to active use, okay? Because once you pick up drugs and alcohol, you're not relapsing again, you're actively using, okay? So relapse is something that happens before you pick up drugs and alcohol. And so if you can understand the signs and what relapse looks like, you can prevent drug and alcohol use from happening. Make sense? I mean, it does to my mind. So if it doesn't, ask any questions you want in the comments. Let me know, what you're not understanding, and I will gladly clarify that for you. Okay? So relapse does not equal a return back to active use. Once you go back to active use, you're already using again. It's not a relapse, you're in active use. Okay? All right. So the word relapse, break it down like we always do. This little prefix in front of it, re. What is report? Relapse. This is a, return to. Is simply what that means. All right? When we talk about the word lapse, if you lapse in something, it implies that you were away, right? That there was a period of time without something. A lapse, if you had a lapse in judgment, right? That means you went with a period of time where you just didn't have good judgment. If you had a lapse in sanity, you know, a lapse in awareness, it's a time that you went without something, all right? So relapse. So this implies that there's a period of time where the drug use doesn't happen, and this prefix, the RE, is a return to, okay? Now, you know, the interesting thing is, addicts and alcoholics are very interesting because they will define relapse, you know, they'll say, well, Miss April, I haven't used heroin in 6 months. Well, okay, what have you used? Well, I relapsed on, you know, weed. Nobody's going to say that to you because most addicts and alcoholics won't consider marijuana a drug of choice to relapse on. You know, if they're not using their drug of choice, then they're not actively using. I know, it doesn't make any sense, but you know, what do I know? Master's degree, 6 years of schooling, 15 years of experience, not to mention life world experience, but what do I know? It's crazy talk. So you kind of got to always nail them to the wall a little bit. And you guys know who you are. You might be able to get away with that with family and friends, but you know Miss April ain't playing that shit, okay? So, understanding that. So this basically, relapse just means a return to, you know, something, a pattern of behavior, all right? So we do not define relapse as active use. So that's basically the first thing of breaking this word down, okay? Guys, I'm going to move a little fast today because there's so much information that I want to cover for you when we're talking about relapse. But let's look at the relapse cycle, and we'll look at it from the perspective of returning to active use, okay? So there's 4 categories here that play out in the relapse cycle, all right? First category is an event, okay? So basically this is where an action happens. This is something, this can be something that happens in real time, or it can be something of a memory. Okay, just a memory can be enough to serve as a trigger that starts to trigger the pattern of events that I'm going to show you. All right, so this is usually where an event happens, you know, and things are happening all day, every day to all of us throughout life. Okay, this is where that powerlessness comes into play. And we're powerless over the things that happen in the world. All right, so this can be anything, any type of action. This can be going to work and having, I don't know, getting into an argument with a coworker. That could be an action. This could be, you know, on your way out, you grab a cup of coffee and you spill it all over yourself. That can be an event. Okay, so let's pick a little event. I want to walk you through this. We're going to keep it simple. Okay, let's say the event here is you spill coffee. You spill coffee on your white shirt. All right, let's just say the event that happens. You spill coffee on your white shirt. Pretty much you're powerless over that, okay? That's something that happens. It happens to all of us. Could we be more careful? Sure, we could be more careful, but it happened. There's nothing you can do about it, all right? Or you could say, even here, you could look at the example of you get a flat tire on your way to work. This is just, also, not only is this powerless, this is like, guys, when you hear the phrase life on life's terms, that's this column right here. All right, this is life on life's terms. Shit happens, as I like to say. Shit just happens, okay? Now, the next thing, now when anything happens here, the first thing that happens is we have a thought in response to that event, okay? So there's the event that happens, then we have a thought in response to the event. And that thought is usually something that's been conditioned to us growing up by parents, adults, educators, school systems, society, cultural things. So in this event, we're going to say, you know, I spilled coffee on my white shirt. or I got a flat tire. What's the thought that's going to be behind that event? Now, here's where it's going to differ. Some people are going to say, oh, shit, you know, damn it, why did this have to happen? They're not going to be happy about it, but they're going to do what they have to do, get it taken care of, move on with their day, right? Okay, the addict alcoholic mind likes to blow things massively out of proportion. Okay, and this is where the relapse cycle starts. Okay, relapse always is about thought patterns and the emotions that are triggered by the thoughts. That's a key phrase. You might want to write that one down. Relapse are thought patterns and the emotional feelings that are triggered by those thoughts. Okay? Now, in the addict alcoholic mind, this is usually a thought that might happen on the way to work. Let's jack the odds up. Not only do you get a flat tire on your way to work, but you also spill coffee on your white shirt. Let's do both of them all in one. Okay? The addict alcoholic is going to think, what? Their initial thought is, everything is always going wrong for me. Okay? Or I always fuck up. Or quite simply, they could just think, why me? You know? So these are kind of like, all of us can have these thoughts. I mean, they can run through our heads, right? But you notice what are these thought patterns? Everything is always going wrong for me. I always fuck up. Why me? All right? You have this extreme thought pattern here that's happening in response to events that in the grand scheme of life are really kind of small. Okay, so you see there's just this extreme sense of what we call maximization, where everything is way worse than it really needs to be. All right? Okay, got it? All right, so we got the event. In response to the event, we have a thought. Now watch this. In response, now here we go, we have this emotional column. Now, are you going to have a feeling in response to the event? Are you going to, as they say, as you guys so fabulously say, I feel a certain type of way about that, Miss April? Well, do you feel a certain type of way about what happened? No. See, this is the kicker here, all right? Nobody, and this is for all human beings, we never have a feeling in response to the event. We think we do, but we don't. We have a feeling in response to what we are thinking about the event. Guys, this is so freaking important, because this is the steps, these 2 steps here is where you take your power back, okay? So you have a feeling in response to the thought, not the event, okay? Now, if I'm thinking everything's always going wrong for me, I always F up, why me, blah, 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 what do you think, what's a feeling, if I'm thinking this, how am I going to feel? Well, I'm going to feel defeated. I'm going to feel depressed. I might feel angry. I might feel hopeless. Right? We're going to have these extreme emotions because we're having these extreme thought patterns. You guys get this. I think you understand it. Okay? So we got the event. In response to the event, we have a thought. In response to the thought, we have a feeling. Last column. This is the action column, all right? This is the response column. And what are we talking about when we're talking about the concept of relapse and returning back to a behavior? The behavior that we were talking about was active use, right? This is where the drug and alcohol use comes back. It's a possible response. Okay, there's a million responses we can have here. There's a million responses people do all the time, right? But here's the kicker. Are you using drugs and alcohol because you spilled coffee on your shirt and you got a flat tire? No. Is your response going to be based upon your thought? No. Your response is going to be based upon how you feel. Okay? How you feel. So, now, if I feel defeated, depressed, angry, hopeless, I might, as a sober person, I don't know, call a friend, talk about it, vent it out. I might meditate. Some people might pray. Some people might just take care of the problem. You know, that means they might just fix the flat tire. They might change their shirt and just go on about their day. Okay? These are all options here, and there's multiple options. So if I'm angry and I feel depressed, some people might exercise. That's a good way to get some of those stronger emotions out of us and discharged out, right? There's a million other things we could do. By the way, some people eat, you know, we're talking food addiction can easily come into play here as a response. But when we're talking about the drugs and alcohol, it's important to know that your response, the active use, okay, is strictly based on the emotion. It's not based upon what happened. So we can have a significant event here, like a death. There really is no such thing as death, but that's a whole other story. We'll talk about that later. But we can have a significant event happen, like the death of a family member. Something happens here, okay? We have a thought about it, we have an emotion about it, and then we have a response, all right? And people will say, well, so you know, so-and-so died. That's why I picked back up again. That's not why you pick back up again. You never pick back up because of the event. You pick back up because of how you feel about the thoughts that you're having about the event. I'm going to say that one more time. Okay? Life on life's terms happens. We have a thought about what happens. We have a feeling about the thought. And then we have a response to how we're feeling. That's it. That's it. That's relapse. Now, if you notice something, relapse doesn't happen in the response. Relapse doesn't happen in the event. Relapse happens here. Because these are the only two columns that you have control over. What you're thinking about and how you feel. You can't control what's going to happen to you in life for the most part. Life on life's terms is going to happen. Things are going to happen that, you know, you can't control. All right? But it's so important to remember that if you can change your thought process about what happens, you can change how you feel. And if you change how you feel, you're going to be able to change the action here. You're going to be able to change your response to things. All right? Guys, this is it. This is it in a nutshell. I don't know how else I could possibly break it down for you. But what I'm going to do is just tell you this. What's a different thought maybe we could think? When you spill coffee on your shirt and you got a flat tire on your way to work, instead of thinking everything's going wrong for me, I always fuck up, you could just say, you know what, oh, that sucks, but whatever. It's a nice day out, the weather's nice. I'm grateful I have a car that I could get a flat tire, because if you get a flat tire, that means you have a vehicle, so that's kind of, I don't know, last time I checked, a nice thing. All right, so you change the thought pattern. And if you change that thought pattern to, oh, well, this sucks, but it's okay, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel all right about it. You're not going to feel terribly bad. You're going to feel okay. But you don't have to feel these strong emotions. And if you feel okay about it, and, you know, you might be a little irritated or frustrated, but irritated and frustrated is a lot less heavy, you know, it's lighter than feeling defeated and depressed. And odds are you're not going to pick back up. So this is where relapse happens, when you have the same old thought patterns in response to things and you get stuck in the feeling cycle of it. So you're always feeling irritated, frustrated, angry, depressed, defeated, hopeless, guilty, shameful, all of this stuff here. This is relapse, returning to these patterns of thoughts and feelings and emotions. So the kicker is to prevent relapse. There's always warning signs that it's coming, because this is it. That's why it's so important to be in tune with how you feel. So the second you can feel that start slipping, because before you get into a full-blown rage, you feel angry. Before you feel angry, you feel frustrated. Before you feel frustrated, you feel irritated. And before you feel irritated, you usually feel tired. You see how I just did that? Everything double backs and double backs. So if you can catch it before the momentum's built up, you can prevent active use. Period. That's relapse, guys. Not the return to drugs and alcohol, the return to old thought patterns and feelings. So the important thing is, if you can be in tune to what you're thinking about, or really how you're feeling on a daily basis, and sometimes you have to do this on an hourly basis, that's cool too. If you can be in tune to those little subtle shifts in your emotions, you don't have to pick back up again. And if you do pick back up again, it's not a big deal. Active use is just a signal to you. It's the way you know that, hey, you've gotten out of spiritual alignment, you need to get back in. It's no more big of a deal as when we accidentally veer off the road. Okay, maybe just me. You accidentally veer off the road and you hit the rumble strips. The rumble strips on the side of the road are there as a sign to tell you, hey, you're off the road. Get back in the lane. That's all. And what do? We hit those and we say, oh, got to get back in. That's all active use can be. It doesn't need to be this big blown out of proportion thing. It doesn't need to cycle downward and you don't have to go all the way back down to where you were before. Not a big deal. We can fix it. Okay? Guys, Rehab for the Soul, Relapse Cycle, Relapse Prevention, we just covered it, 20 minutes or so. What more could you want? If you're interested in those weekly tips on how to stay sober and spiritual, please subscribe to my channel, Rehab for the Soul. Until then, you know what I say, it ain't perfect, but it's rock and roll.